Girl had no idea the man she asked, "Buy my teddy bear, my sister needs surgery," was Millionaire CEO. This is a story of second chances born in the most unexpected places, of a little girl's courage, a mother's quiet strength, and a man who finally dared to hope again. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and get ready, because this story might just change how you see everything. The bus terminal was loud in a way that made your bones ache, the kind of noise that didn't come from just one thing, but from everything colliding at once. The rumble of departing buses, the hiss of brakes, the crackling static of overhead announcements that no one really listened to. It was the sound of motion, of exhaustion, of stories ending and others beginning. Among the chaos, a man stood still near a faded vending machine, head bowed beneath a weathered gray cap, shoulders hunched into a brown coat that had seen better years. His hands were tucked in his pockets, not from the cold, it was warm for early spring, but from habit. He had grown used to folding into himself, making himself small, anonymous, safe. He looked like any other weary traveler, that was the point. Adrian Cole had once been a name that meant something. There were magazine covers, interviews with headlines calling him the future of ethical pharmaceuticals, the boy wonder of biotech. And then there wasn't. One decision, one boardroom war, he lost. And suddenly the story was no longer about what he built, but what he failed to stop. He had resigned, disappeared, let the machine devour itself. He told himself it was noble, that walking away had been the right thing. But lately he had begun to wonder if it was just the easiest. He was not supposed to be here. He had taken the overnight bus into the city for one reason: to retrieve a box of old journals from the last apartment he had abandoned. He planned to return to the quiet town, where no one asked questions, where the grocery clerk only knew him as Mr. Andrew. But the transfer bus was delayed, and the crowd thickened around him, pressing in like the weight of a past he had tried to bury. He barely noticed the girl at first. Just another small figure moving through the current of limbs and rolling suitcases. She was maybe 10, slight and sharp-boned, her long black hair tied into a frayed ponytail with a red ribbon that had faded to rust. Her clothes were clean but faded: a pink t-shirt beneath a denim jacket that was one size too large, jeans with carefully patched knees, sneakers scuffed nearly white. She stood with an odd stillness, eyes scanning the crowd with the quiet intensity of someone used to being ignored. And then suddenly, she was standing directly in front of him. He looked up, startled. She was staring at him, her chin lifted slightly like someone preparing for rejection. In her arms, she held a teddy bear, its fur matted and ears askew. It had once been white. Now it was a patchwork of age and love and neglect. She clutched it to her chest, then extended it outward like an offering. "Please buy my teddy bear," she said softly. "My sister needs surgery." Adrian blinked. The words didn't quite land at first, not in that place, not from that voice. He had been approached by plenty of people over the years, people asking for change, food, a ride. But never like this, never so direct, never so heartbreaking. He looked at the bear, then back at her. "Why me?" He asked, the words escaping before he could stop them. She didn't flinch. "You look like someone who has enough." He was silent for a long moment. The terminal noise seemed to fall away around them the way sound sometimes bends around grief. He looked again at the bear and something pulled at him. Not the object itself, but something small and square stitched awkwardly into the seam along its back leg. His stomach turned, but he said nothing. "What's your name?" he asked, crouching slightly so he could meet her eyes. "Maya," she said. "My sister's name is Ivy. She's 4. She can't walk without surgery, and the hospital said we have to wait, but I think waiting is just another way of saying no." Her voice didn't tremble. That was what got him the most. She had said it like fact, like a line she had rehearsed for strangers who stopped long enough to listen. He glanced around, half expecting to see a parent watching from nearby, but there was no one. "Where's your mom?" he asked carefully. "She's gone," Maya replied, then hesitated. "Not gone like dead, gone like the police took her. They said she broke rules at the clinic, but she only yelled because Ivy was hurting, and they made us leave. We're staying with my cousin now. He's 17. He works across the street." She pointed toward the gas station just beyond the terminal parking lot. A faded sign blinked above the glass doors. Inside, a teenager with tired eyes was restocking shelves, glancing toward the windows every few minutes. Adrian looked back at Maya. She still held the bear out toward him, arm unwavering. "I can't take your teddy bear," he said gently. "But we need help," she replied. "And he's the only thing worth anything I still have." He swallowed against the lump rising in his throat. "How about this?" he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a $20 bill, creased but clean, and offered it to her. "You keep the bear, buy lunch, something warm, and I'll walk you over to your cousin, all right?" Maya hesitated. Her eyes flicked between the bill and his face. After a moment, she nodded once and took it. She didn't thank him, she didn't smile, but she reached out and gently touched his sleeve like she was grounding herself. "Okay," she said, "but Ivy's still going to need surgery. It costs a lot." He didn't say what he was thinking, that he knew exactly how much spinal pediatric surgery cost, that he had once signed off on clinical trials for the very procedure she might need, that the hospital she had been turned away from had once been one of his company's partners. They walked together toward the station exit. Ivy sat in a second-hand stroller just outside, curled under a pale blue blanket with cartoon whales. Her face was pale and her limbs tucked awkwardly, as if her own muscles had betrayed her long ago. She held a juice box in one hand and the bear's ear in the other, even in sleep. Adrian stood silently as Maya adjusted the blanket around her sister, tucking it in with a precision that only came from repetition. He glanced again at the bear, that small stitched square. A fragment of white thread formed the faint outline of a symbol. It was not clear, not from a distance, but his chest tightened as recognition dawned. He had seen that mark before, years ago when his design team had created limited edition bears for pediatric patients as part of a failed goodwill campaign. Each one had been stitched with a tag bearing the emblem of Careline Therapeutics, his company, his decision. "Where did you get the bear?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "It was Ivy's since she was a baby," Maya said. "Mom said a nurse gave it to her." "I don't think she remembers. She was really little, but she sleeps better when she's holding him." Adrian didn't reply. He couldn't. They reached the edge of the terminal, and Maya's cousin finally spotted them and came rushing over, face lined with panic, until he saw Maya's nod. He apologized for leaving them alone, explained he had begged his boss not to schedule him back-to-back shifts. Adrian didn't judge him. The boy looked more exhausted than anyone should at that age. "Thanks for helping the cousin," said cautiously, eyeing Adrian's coat, his silence. Adrian only nodded. "Make sure they eat something warm," he said. "And if Ivy's condition gets worse, take her to Mercy Pediatric. Ask for Dr. Elaine Wu. Tell her Mr. Andrews sent you. She'll know what to do." The cousin nodded, still wary, but Maya looked up at him with eyes that held something different now. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "You're not just a stranger, are you?" she asked quietly. Adrian didn't answer. He simply reached into his other pocket and took out a pen and scrap of paper. He wrote down a phone number. "If you need anything," he said, "call this. Leave a message. Someone will come." Maya looked at the paper, then at him. She didn't ask his name. As he turned to walk away, she called after him. "Wait," she said. "What's your name?" "Your real one?" He paused, then turned back, eyes heavy. "You can call me Adrian," he said. Maya nodded slowly. "Okay, Mr. Adrian. I'll keep the bear, but I might still try to sell it tomorrow." His lips twitched into something that almost resembled a smile. "Then I better come back before you do." She said nothing more, just turned back to Ivy, adjusting the bear's ear over her sister's small hand. Adrian walked into the terminal again, but this time everything felt different. The noise returned sharper now. His cap no longer made him invisible. His coat felt like armor that had cracked somewhere near the heart. The name she had spoken, Adrian, it didn't feel safe anymore. It felt exposed. But for the first time in years, he didn't mind. Because a little girl had handed him something far heavier than a teddy bear. She had handed him a question. Who are you when someone needs you to be more than what you were? And somewhere deep inside he realized he was not ready to run just yet. Adrian did not sleep that night. He had returned to his one-bedroom rental apartment just outside the city limits, a place so bare it could have been mistaken for temporary housing. The walls were white. The windows were cracked open to let in the spring air, but the breeze brought more questions than peace. He had stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing on the street below. All he could think about was Maya's face when she held out that teddy bear, steady and sure, like this was something she had done 100 times before. But she was only a child. Children should not know how to barter hope for help. By morning, Adrian had made a decision he could not fully explain. He showered, shaved, and changed into something clean, still casual, but no longer tattered. He looked less like a man hiding and more like someone trying to be human again. He left early, stopping by a small cafe to pick up 2 warm sandwiches, 2 juice boxes, and a small pack of markers. It was not much, but he had learned that gestures did not need to be grand to matter. The sun was just rising when he returned to the terminal. The crowds were thinner now, and the air smelled of diesel and fried eggs from the food cart near the corner. He spotted Maya first. She was sitting on the edge of a concrete planter near the bus depot entrance legs, swinging slightly, the teddy bear tucked beside her. Ivy was still asleep in the stroller, wrapped in the same cartoon blanket, her head tilted gently to one side. Maya looked up as he approached. She said nothing, but her eyes followed him with quiet precision. Adrian offered the paper bag without a word. She opened it, peeked inside, and gave a small nod. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would," Adrian replied. She took out the sandwich and handed the smaller one to Ivy, who was just beginning to stir. The toddler blinked up at him with eyes that were too tired for her age, then reached instinctively for the juice box Maya held up. Adrian crouched beside her, unsure what to say. "I brought you these too," he said, holding out the markers. "Figured you might need something to do." Maya accepted them without hesitation and began drawing on the back of a bus schedule. Ivy clutched the bear with one hand, while sipping her juice with the other, her small fingers curling around the worn fur. Adrian noticed again the faint stitching at the base of the bear's leg, that subtle square that had triggered something in him yesterday. He had dreamed about it, or maybe remembered it in fragments. The marketing team had insisted it would be a symbol of comfort, a way to humanize the company's image. But the bears had only been distributed for a few months before budget cuts and press backlash shut the initiative down. He watched Maya draw for a few minutes before speaking again. "I talked to someone I know at Mercy Pediatric," he said quietly. "There's a doctor there, someone who owes me a favor. She can take a look at Ivy. No promises yet, but it's a start." Maya didn't look up from her drawing. "Why are you helping us?" The question hung there heavy with the weight of suspicion earned too young. Adrian exhaled slowly. "Because someone should have helped a long time ago. And maybe I should have been that someone." She finally glanced up at him, eyes narrowed. "Did you know my mom?" "No," Adrian said, and it was the truth. "But I think I was supposed to." Maya looked down again, adding grass beneath a stick figure she was sketching. "Mom wrote letters. She said if she could just reach the right person, someone would help." Adrian did not reply. His throat was too tight. He had no doubt one of those letters had been addressed to him, or at least to his title, which once carried more power than he knew how to use. The teenage cousin Jason arrived a few minutes later, breathless from running across the street during his break. He thanked Adrian again, though the edge of distrust remained in his voice. "She's okay," Jason asked, glancing down at Ivy. "She's eating," Maya answered before Adrian could. "And he's taking us to see a doctor today." Jason's eyebrows rose. "A real one?" Adrian nodded. "Mercy Pediatric. Dr. Wu. I called this morning." Jason looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "Okay. But I'm coming too." That afternoon, they made their way to the clinic. Adrian used a rideshare under his alias account, not wanting to risk using any name that might attract attention. When they arrived, Dr. Wu was waiting in the hallway, her expression flickering with recognition and disbelief when she saw Adrian. "You really showed up," she said under her breath. Adrian gave her a tired smile. "I need a favor. A real one." She glanced at the girls, then back at him. "Let's talk in my office after I examine the little one." The appointment passed in a blur of questions, gentle tests, and a review of medical notes Maya had carefully saved in a plastic folder. Ivy remained mostly quiet, her large eyes tracking every movement. Maya answered most of the questions while Jason hovered nearby, arms crossed protectively. Dr. Wu eventually returned to the hallway where Adrian stood waiting. "She needs surgery," she said quietly. "It's not urgent this week, but soon. Her spine is compressing the nerves that control her legs. Delay much longer and it'll be permanent." Adrian nodded. "You can do it. I can coordinate it. We'll need a full scan pre-op labs and a recovery plan. It won't be cheap." "I'll cover it," Adrian said immediately. "No insurance, no delays. Just tell me where to sign." Dr. Wu studied him for a long time. "Are you ready for what happens if this goes public?" "I'm not the story," Adrian said. "She is." But they both knew that wasn't true. Back at the shelter that evening, Adrian handed Maya a folder with appointment schedules, maps, and a meal voucher for the clinic cafeteria. She flipped through the papers, then looked up at him. "You're not just some guy, are you?" Adrian hesitated. "No," he said quietly. "But I'm trying to be someone better now." Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a small piece of fabric. It was part of the teddy bear, the leg that had started to tear the day before. She had opened the seam and found the note. "I found this," she said, handing it to him. He unfolded the scrap slowly. It was a faded piece of receipt paper, the ink nearly gone but still legible in careful handwriting. It read, "If this reaches someone with power, please. My daughter Ivy is only 2. She needs the treatment you promised in your interview. Her older sister prays every night. We are not asking for money, just a chance. Please. I don't know where else to turn." Emily. Adrian stood there frozen. Emily. He had never seen the letter, but he remembered the interview. He had spoken with such confidence, such certainty about expanding access. That promise had been turned into a press slogan, a boardroom punchline. And someone, maybe a low-level assistant, had seen this letter and discarded it. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not knowing if he was speaking to Maya Ivy or a memory of someone he had never met. Maya looked up at him, her eyes unreadable. "Do better," she said. "That's all we want." He nodded. "I will." That night, Adrian returned home and pulled out a dusty box from the closet. Inside were files, letters, clippings from his former life. He stayed up for hours reading, making lists, calling old contacts. Not everyone hung up on him. Some still owed him. Some still believed he had walked away for the right reasons. By the time the sun rose, Adrian had secured the surgical slot for Ivy, arranged a quiet transfer to a private rehab suite for recovery, and contacted a discreet lawyer to begin exploring guardianship options in case Emily did not return. He also made one more call, to a journalist. Her name was Mara Landon. She had once tried to expose the price gouging scandal before it broke. She had always believed Adrian was not the villain. She had reached out to him once, and he had never answered. Now he left her a voicemail. "This is Adrian Cole," he said. "I have a story, but it's not mine. It's about a little girl, a bear, and a note someone tried to bury. Call me back. It's time." Then he hung up and closed his eyes. He was not running anymore. He was walking straight into the past. And if he was lucky, into a future where he could finally be what that little note had asked for. Not a hero, not a savior, just someone who finally showed up. Adrian stood outside the clinic's back entrance as the morning light broke over the city. The streets were still damp from a light drizzle the night before, and the air carried the scent of wet asphalt and lilacs blooming somewhere nearby. His hands were tucked into the pockets of his navy sweater, and his eyes remained fixed on the sliding doors. He had been coming here every morning now just after sunrise, bringing small breakfasts, coloring books, crossword puzzles, anything to make the waiting easier. Not just for Ivy, who had begun a series of pre-surgery assessments, but for Maya too. She still did not smile much, but her eyes were more curious now, less guarded. She had even asked him once what his favorite color was. He had told her blue. She had nodded and said she had guessed it. She did not say why. Inside the clinic, Ivy sat cross-legged on a padded mat in the children's room, a physical therapist guiding her through gentle stretches. The toddler's face was still pale, but her body no longer sagged with the same heavy exhaustion. There was something in her posture now, something defiant. Her fingers still clutched the teddy bear, but the way she held it had changed. It was no longer a shield, it was a companion. Maya sat nearby, drawing in the sketch pad Adrian had brought her. On the page, she was sketching a scene with 4 stick figures. One was clearly Ivy. One looked like herself. The other 2 figures were taller. One wore a ponytail. The other had a beard and a cap. Above the group, she had written one word carefully in block letters together. Adrian entered quietly, nodding to the therapist and crouching beside Maya. "Is that us?" he asked, gently. She gave him a side glance. "Don't let it go to your head," she said, but her tone lacked any real bite. Adrian smiled, too late. A nurse entered the room with a clipboard and a soft voice. "Ivy's imaging is scheduled for noon. Dr. Wu wants her prepped by 11. Maya nodded solemnly, folding the drawing and tucking it into her backpack. Later that morning, while Ivy was being wheeled to imaging, Adrian found himself alone in the hallway with Maya. She was sitting cross-legged on a bench, swinging her legs slowly, her chin tucked against her chest. "I think she's scared," Maya said softly. "Even if she doesn't say it." Adrian sat beside her, his hands clasped loosely in his lap. "She's brave," he replied. "But it's okay to be scared. Even the bravest people are." Maya turned to him, then her eyes darker than usual. "Are you scared?" He hesitated. Sometimes he said honestly, "More lately. Because of Ivy. Because of what I didn't do when I had the chance. And because now I want to get it right." Maya nodded, silent again. Then she asked, "Why did you stop being important?" The question caught him off guard. "I mean," she continued, "you used to be the boss, right? My mom said the man on the news used to be the one who could fix everything. So why'd you stop?" Adrian exhaled slowly. "Because I thought stepping down would do more good than staying and fighting. I thought I had failed so badly that maybe disappearing was the only way to make it right." Maya tilted her head. "Did it work?" He gave a half smile. "Not even a little." She nodded again. "I think you should be important again, but in a different way." "How's that?" She shrugged. "Like this. Like now." He looked at her, something catching in his throat. "You have a way of getting right to the truth. You know that I listen," she said simply. That afternoon, while Ivy napped after her scans and Jason had left for a short shift at the station, Adrian walked with Maya through the hospital garden. It was a small square courtyard with stone benches and raised flower beds that volunteers kept blooming all year. Maya stopped in front of a bush of white tulips, leaning in to inhale the scent. "My mom used to pick these on our walks," she said. "Said they smelled like clean hope." Adrian chuckled. "That sounds like something a poet would say." "She was one," Maya replied. "Wrote in a notebook every night after we were asleep. I used to sneak and read them sometimes. They were sad, but the kind of sad that makes your chest feel warmer, not colder." Adrian glanced at her, surprised. "That's a good way to describe it." She said words matter, that you can hurt or heal with them. That's why she kept writing letters even when people didn't answer. Adrian's steps slowed. "I'm sorry no one did." Maya looked at him. "You're answering now. That's something." They sat together on a stone bench, the sunlight filtering through the young leaves overhead. For a long while they said nothing. Then Adrian cleared his throat. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, quietly. Maya looked up. "I might be in the news soon," he said. "A reporter is asking questions. She knows who I am, what I used to be. I don't know what she'll write, but I don't want you or Ivy to be surprised." Maya's brow furrowed. "Why would that matter?" "Because people might say things, unkind things, about me, about how I used to run the company that ignored families like yours." She stared at him for a moment, then shrugged. "If you were still like that, you wouldn't be here." He blinked. She stood up, brushing dirt from her knees. "People change. Some don't. But you did. That's what matters." That evening, the clinic staff gathered to review Ivy's scans. Dr. Wu walked Adrian through them, pointing out the compression near the L4 vertebrae, the narrowing around the spinal cord. She laid out a schedule: surgery and 1 week recovery projected at 3 to 4 months with physical therapy. Adrian agreed to every detail, signed every form, authorized every expense. He arranged for temporary housing for Jason and the girls near the recovery wing. He even pulled a few final strings to request an old friend in the board of pediatric rehab centers to take personal oversight of Ivy's recovery plan. He was ready. The next morning, the story broke. Adrian had not expected it so soon. The headline ran in bold across the front page of a major digital news outlet. Former pharma CEO Adrian Cole resurfaces at children's shelter. Quiet redemption or PR move. The article was fair, balanced even. Mara Landon had done her homework. She detailed the history, his rise, the scandal, his sudden resignation. But she also included the facts. His work in the last week, his support of the girls, the upcoming surgery. She quoted Maya, though unnamed. He helped. He listens. He shows up. Within hours, Adrian's inbox was full. Former colleagues, enemies, strangers. Some messages were supportive, others venomous. Offers to debate, offers to slander. Old board members wanted statements. One even offered him a way back in on the condition he distanced himself from the story. He declined them all. He turned off his phone and went to the clinic. Maya met him at the door. "I saw the article," she said. "People at the shelter are talking." "Are you okay?" he asked. "Ivy drew you in her coloring book," she replied. "She called you Bear Doctor." Adrian smiled faintly. "Is that good or bad?" She smiled when she said it. He stepped into the room, and Ivy looked up from her bed. She reached for the bear, then looked at him. Then slowly, she held the bear out. Adrian knelt beside the bed. For me, she nodded, solemn. He took it gently, holding it in his hands. Then he saw it. A new note, this one tucked into the other leg, scrawled in marker. "Thank you for not leaving." He looked at Maya, who stood quietly in the doorway. "She wanted to give you something," Maya said. "She said you make her feel like she matters." Adrian felt his throat tighten. He pressed the bear to his chest. That night, he did not return to his apartment. He stayed at the clinic, sitting between the girls, one asleep and one pretending not to be. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole slept without regret. Not because his name was clean, not because the world had forgiven him, but because 2 little girls had. And in their quiet forgiveness, he had found something he never thought he deserved again: a place to belong. The morning of Ivy's surgery arrived quietly, as if even the city understood something sacred was about to happen. Rain had fallen through the night, and now the streets shimmered with a soft silver light that made the air feel clean and still. The sky was overcast but gentle, wrapped in a hush that seemed to slow everything down. In the pediatric wing of Mercy Clinic, Maya stood at the edge of her sister's hospital bed, gently brushing a strand of hair off Ivy's forehead. The little girl lay curled under a fresh blanket, the same teddy bear tucked beside her chest, one arm looped around its neck like it was a lifeline. Her brown eyes were wide open, not from fear, but from an alert, calm readiness that Maya had come to recognize. Ivy was brave in the way a child becomes when she has no other choice. She did not cry. She did not speak. She just held on. Adrian entered the room carrying 2 paper bags and a small plastic container in the crook of his arm. He wore dark jeans and a soft navy sweater, his usual coat left behind. He had shaved his hair, combed neatly, but there were shadows beneath his eyes that no grooming could hide. He had not slept well, not since the article ran, and the calls began flooding in. He had ignored every invitation to debate, every demand to clarify, every suggestion to rehabilitate his image. None of that mattered now. What mattered was this room, this child, this morning. "Good morning," he said softly. Maya turned and gave him a quiet nod. She looked older today, her back straighter, her eyes more serious than usual. Ivy turned her head just slightly toward the sound of his voice, then reached out her small hand toward the container he carried. "You remembered," Maya said. I promised, Adrian replied, placing the container beside Ivy on the bed. Inside was a small ceramic elephant, its trunk curled upward, painted with soft blue and gold swirls. He had found it in a second-hand shop years ago, and kept it since, though he had never known why. Now he did. It's for luck, he said, crouching beside the bed. My mother used to say elephants remember everything and protect the people they love. Ivy touched the figurine gently, then looked at him and gave the smallest nod. Adrian turned to Maya and handed her the paper bag. Breakfast, he said. Blueberry muffins. No nuts. Maya opened the bag, sniffed, and gave a satisfied nod. She'll eat half of one if I break it into small pieces. She's got good taste, he said. They sat in quiet companionship for a few minutes as nurses came and went, checking vitals, updating notes. Dr. Wu arrived just after 8 o'clock. Her expression was calm and focused, her eyes steady. She shook Adrian's hand and bent down to speak to Ivy in a soft, clear voice. We're going to take good care of you, sweetheart, she said. You'll go to sleep, and when you wake up, the hard part will be over. Ivy blinked slowly and clutched the elephant tighter. Maya stepped forward and whispered something into her sister's ear. Ivy listened, nodded again, and squeezed her hand. Adrian watched this exchange with a kind of reverence he had never known before. It was something unspoken, a ritual of trust between two people who had walked through too much together. Dr. Wu straightened and looked at Adrian. You coming with us to pre-op? He nodded. Just to the doors. A few minutes later, the surgical team arrived to wheel Ivy into the corridor. Maya walked beside the bed until the nurses gently stopped her at the hallway threshold. She's in good hands, one nurse said kindly. Adrian kept pace with the bed as they moved down the long hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Ivy looked up at him with wide eyes, her lips slightly parted, as if she wanted to say something but could not find the words. As they reached the pre-op doors, Adrian crouched down beside her one last time. You are stronger than most grown-ups, I know, he said softly. I will be right here when you wake up. She looked at him for a long second. Then she whispered, her voice small but clear. Thank you for not leaving. The doors closed slowly, and then she was gone. Back in the family waiting lounge, Maya sat on a cushioned chair, knees pulled to her chest, her drawing pad untouched beside her. Jason arrived 15 minutes later, out of breath and anxious, having run from the station on his short break. Adrian gave him the update, then returned to sit beside Maya. Neither of them spoke for a while. The clock on the wall ticked with painful slowness. Every minute felt stretched thin. The receptionist brought coffee. Jason paced. Adrian read through the surgical brief again for the 5th time. Maya finally looked up. She doesn't usually talk to people, she said. Ivy Maya nodded. Only to me. And sometimes to Mom. But she talked to you. Adrian looked down at his hands. She's very brave. So are you, Maya said quietly. He turned to her, startled. You keep showing up, she said, even when you don't have to. That's what brave people do. Adrian felt something shift in his chest, something tender and unexpected. Your mother would be very proud of you, he said. Maya's lip trembled slightly, but she didn't cry. She always said the world was hard, but we were harder. She told Ivy she had magic in her legs. She said one day she'd walk into a room and change it just by being there. Adrian reached over and gently rested a hand on Maya's shoulder. She already has. Hours passed. The surgery was long. Dr. Wu had said it would be. At one point, Jason had to leave for his shift again, promising to return before Ivy woke up. Maya lay across 2 chairs curled under a blanket Adrian brought from the nurse's station. He sat beside her, watching the rain begin again through the tall glass windows. At exactly 3:30 in the afternoon, Dr. Wu walked into the waiting room. She looked exhausted, but she was smiling. It went well, she said. Adrian stood. She's okay, she's stable. We got the decompression we needed. Her spinal cord looks clean. With rehab and time, she'll be able to walk. Not just assisted, independently. Maya let out a breath that turned into a sound somewhere between a sob and a laugh. Dr. Wu placed a gentle hand on her back. She's waking up now. One visitor only for now. Adrian turned to Maya. You go. She'll want you. Maya nodded and followed the nurse down the hallway. Adrian sat back down, feeling both light and heavy at the same time. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the fatigue settle in his bones. For the first time since this began, he allowed himself to hope fully without the weight of doubt. About 20 minutes later, Maya returned. "She asked for you," she said simply. Adrian stood and followed her down the hallway. The room was dimly lit. Ivy lay in the recovery bed, still pale but blinking. Slowly, her head turned toward the door. The teddy bear and elephant were tucked beside her. When she saw Adrian, she raised one hand slightly, palm facing upward. He stepped closer and gently took it. "Hey there," he whispered. "You did it." She didn't speak, just nodded. Maya watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, but her posture relaxed for the first time in days. The three of them sat like that for a long time, surrounded by the soft beeping of monitors and the faint scent of antiseptic and rain. That night, Jason returned with hot soup from the diner down the street, and they all ate in the family lounge. Adrian told them stories from when he was a boy, how he had once tried to build a treehouse but fell out before he finished the ladder, how he used to think lemon slices were tiny boats for ants, how he had once glued his hand to a book because he didn't want to stop reading. Maya laughed for the first time in his presence. It was small and unexpected and beautiful. Jason grinned. "You're not as serious as you look." "I try to keep it a secret," Adrian replied. Later, as the clinic grew quiet and the nurses dimmed the hallway lights, Adrian walked Maya to the family overnight room. Jason was already inside, setting up the fold-out cot. Maya turned to Adrian in the doorway. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked. "I'll be here first thing," he promised. She nodded. "Okay." As he turned to leave, she added, "Good night, Mr. Adrian." He smiled. "Good night, Maya." He walked out into the cool evening air, the rain now reduced to a gentle mist. The city shimmered under the streetlights, every surface damp and glowing. He paused at the sidewalk and looked up at the sky. He had built empires, managed fortunes, been praised and condemned in the same breath. But nothing had ever felt like this. This was real. This was home. And for the first time in years, Adrian Cole was exactly where he was meant to be. 3 weeks passed. The city shifted slowly from late winter to the early hint of spring, the air warming just enough to soften the trees into budding green. Inside Mercy Clinic's rehabilitation center, the days grew longer and steadier. Ivy had begun her therapy, and though the sessions were difficult, she met each one with quiet determination. Her legs trembled under her but held. Her fingers clutched the handrails tightly, and she looked up only once during her first steps, her eyes locking with Maya's. She did not speak, but the look said everything. "I am not afraid. I am doing it." Maya beamed and clapped. Jason wiped his eyes with his sleeve, and Adrian stood further back near the doorway, saying nothing but unable to stop his chest from tightening with pride. The bear still sat in Ivy's lap between sessions, and the tiny elephant rode on the armrest of her wheelchair like a talisman. Her mother's message, still carefully hidden inside the lining, remained untouched. Adrian had not told anyone about what he had found, not yet. Not even Maya. It did not feel like a secret he wanted to reveal in the middle of fluorescent lights and cold linoleum. It felt sacred, like something meant for a specific moment. And he knew in his gut that moment had not come yet. Maya's bond with Adrian had continued to deepen. She no longer called him Mr. Adrian quite so formally. Sometimes she simply called him Adrian. Other times, when she was tired or distracted, she called him Hey and handed him drawings without warning. He now had a collection of folded pages in his coat pocket, each one more detailed than the last. Some were of animals, some were of the clinic halls. One was a drawing of Ivy walking between two figures, one with short hair and a coat, the other with a ponytail and a clipboard. He had stared at that one for hours before putting it away. Still, not everything was peaceful. On a Thursday morning, the calm broke. Adrian had arrived early, a cup of coffee in hand, and a small pastry for Maya, who had developed a quiet fondness for lemon-filled danishes. But as he entered the lobby, he spotted a man leaning against the front desk, not part of the staff, not someone he recognized. The man was short, wiry, with sharp eyes and a press badge clipped crookedly to his lapel. Adrian froze. The man turned slowly as if he had sensed him coming. "Adrian Cole," he said, smiling. "Or are you going by something else these days?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "You need to leave. Just a quick word. The world's been wondering, where you disappeared to after the Narvox fallout. Now you turn up here spending your days in a children's clinic. Seems like a story, don't you think?" A nurse behind the counter stepped forward, frowning. "Sir, you can't be here." The reporter held up both hands. "No problem, I'll go. But you can't hide forever, Adrian. The public always catches up." He walked out without waiting for a response, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than before. Adrian stood still for a moment, gripping the coffee cup so tightly the lid buckled slightly. Then he turned and walked toward Ivy's wing. Inside, Maya was helping Ivy put stickers on her walker, her face lit with amusement as she let her sister choose between glittery cats or cartoon suns. When she looked up and saw Adrian's expression, her smile faded. "Everything okay?" she asked. Adrian hesitated, then forced a small smile. "Just someone from my past." Maya nodded slowly. "You look like you saw a ghost." He knelt beside Ivy and offered her a sticker sheet of his own one with tiny animal astronauts. She picked the monkey in a helmet and placed it on the walker's handle. Then she looked at him, her small hand brushing his wrist. He covered it gently with his own. Later that evening, Adrian sat alone in his apartment for the first time in days. He had been staying at a nearby rental, close enough to the clinic to walk each morning. The space was bare, sterile even, a temporary hiding place. On the table before him lay an open laptop and unread email, blinking with a red notification in the corner. He opened it finally and found the article. It was already online, a polished headline, a cropped photo from years ago, a twisting of facts into half-truths and speculation, the kind of piece that made a man look monstrous in 3 paragraphs or less. There was a quote from a former board member. Anonymous, of course. There was a vague timeline of his disappearance, after the recall, followed by a subtle suggestion that perhaps he was trying to redeem himself by attaching to a sick child's story. He closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair, his hands over his face. The next day, the ripple began to reach the clinic. A call from the board. A whispered comment from a nurse. Jason overheard 2 visitors mention the name Cole with wide eyes. When Maya found Adrian in the hallway, she was holding a folded sheet of paper in her hand, her lips pressed tight. This was taped to Ivy's walker, she said, handing it to him. He unfolded it. The note read, "Careful who you let around children. Not all saints are real." He exhaled slowly and crumpled the paper. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't think it would follow me here." "What happened?" Maya asked. "I mean, really. What did you do?" He looked at her. The moment had come. "Years ago," he said slowly, "my company produced a batch of pain medication for children. It was meant to be fast-acting. We rushed testing. We believed in the formula. But one ingredient triggered an adverse reaction in a small group of patients. 2 children suffered seizures. One of them lost motor function permanently." Maya listened, still and serious. "We recalled everything. I paid restitution. I stepped down. But the board used it to push me out completely. They painted me as negligent, cold, corporate. I withdrew from the world after that." "Were you responsible?" she asked. "I was the CEO," he said. "That makes me responsible. But I didn't know. I should have. That's the part that haunts me." Maya was quiet for a moment. "You helped Ivy," she said. "You didn't have to. You could have walked away when I asked you to buy a bear, but you didn't." He looked at her, a tremor of emotion in his voice. "Because I couldn't make the same mistake twice." That night, Adrian met with Dr. Wu and the clinic board. They discussed the article, the public risk, the optics. But in the end, Dr. Wu spoke up clearly. None of that changes what he's done for Ivy, or this clinic. They agreed he could stay, but the board would begin reviewing their donor policies. Adrian understood. He didn't fight it. 3 days later, Maya found him on the clinic rooftop. He was staring out at the city, the same small elephant in his hand. "I read the article," she said. He nodded. "Ivy's walking farther every day," she added. "You should see her." He smiled faintly. "I'll come down." Maya stepped closer and held something out. A folded paper, a drawing. He opened it. It was the three of them. Ivy standing tall in the middle, Maya on one side, Adrian on the other. Ivy was holding both their hands. He looked up, his throat tight. "Do you want to be her family?" Maya asked. Adrian stared at her, overwhelmed. "I don't mean legally. Not yet. I just mean, do you want to be there? Really be there?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." She nodded. "Then we'll figure out the rest together." They stood there a while longer, the city pulsing beneath them, uncertain but full of promise. The bear still waited downstairs. So did Ivy. So did the next chapter. And Adrian Cole, once a man who ran from everything he touched, was finally ready to stay. The morning of Ivy's surgery arrived with a sky so blue, it felt defiant. Birds chirped near the clinic windows, and the city, though still coated in a layer of winter's final chill, seemed to stretch into the promise of spring. Maya had not slept the night before. She had curled herself up in the plastic chair beside Ivy's bed, her head resting against the railing, one hand wrapped tightly around her sister's fingers. She watched her chest rise and fall, gentle, rhythmic, alive. That was all she needed. Ivy was alive. That was more than enough to begin with. Adrian arrived just after dawn. He brought 2 warm muffins from a nearby bakery and a thermos of tea. Maya smiled weakly when she saw him, but there was a different weight in her eyes now. She did not speak right away. Ivy was still asleep, the bear clutched to her chest, the tiny elephant tucked under her arm like a secret. When Adrian sat beside her, Maya finally whispered, "What if something goes wrong?" Adrian did not try to answer immediately. He looked at Ivy, so small in the white sheets, her hair curling gently across her pillow. "She's stronger than anything I've ever seen," he said. "And she's got you. That's not just luck. That's power." Maya blinked hard. "I used to think love made you weak. Like if you loved something too much, you'd fall apart when you lost it." He looked at her. "Maybe it just means you fight harder to keep it." At 7:30, the surgical team came. Maya kissed Ivy's forehead and whispered into her ear. Adrian held her other hand until the moment the gurney turned the corner and Ivy disappeared down the hallway. Then there was only silence and waiting. Maya paced the corridor like a storm trapped in a glass bottle. Adrian sat with his head in his hands. Dr. Wu appeared twice to update them. Stable, focused, proceeding as expected. Maya could not hear most of the words. Her ears rang, her heart pounded. She pressed her hand against the wall and prayed to someone she no longer believed in. Then, sometime near noon, Dr. Wu returned and said the words they both feared and hoped for. "It's done. It went well." Ivy was waking up. Adrian exhaled like he had been holding his breath for a year. Maya collapsed into his arms and did not let go for a long time. They were allowed into the recovery room an hour later. Ivy's eyes fluttered open slowly, the room blurry, the lights soft. She reached weakly toward the bear, which a nurse had placed beside her. Maya rushed to her side and brushed her hair back gently. Ivy blinked again. Her mouth moved. A single sound escaped. "May!" Maya froze. Adrian turned sharply. Ivy's lips had moved. Her voice, broken but real, had spoken her sister's name. "Say it again," Maya whispered, her hand trembling. Ivy swallowed and tried again. This time it was clearer. "Maya." Maya sobbed openly, dropping her forehead against Ivy's hand. Adrian felt tears fill his own eyes. He stepped closer and knelt beside the bed. "Ivy," he said softly. "It's me. Adrian." She looked at him with something like recognition. Then her hand moved toward the bear's stomach. Slowly, deliberately, she pressed her fingers into the seam Adrian had opened weeks before. She pushed down, then looked at him. He understood. He pulled the bear into his lap and carefully unstitched the hidden fold he had resewn. Inside, the small slip of paper still rested untouched. He opened it. Maya watched his hands with growing curiosity. "What is that?" she asked. Adrian hesitated. Then he passed it to her. Maya unfolded the note slowly. The handwriting was familiar, wobbly and soft, but unmistakably her mother's. It read, "If anything happens to me, don't be afraid. Find Adrian. He will keep you safe. He owes me, and he will never let you fall." Maya's hands shook. She stared at the note as if it might vanish. "What does that mean?" she asked. "Why would she write that Adrian looked down ashamed? Because I knew her, years ago, before all of this. I never told you. I didn't think it mattered anymore." Maya stood up slowly. "You knew my mother, yes," he said. "I met her when she was working as a medical researcher. She consulted for my company. For a while we were close, but when the Narvox formula passed trials, she raised concerns. Said the risk profile for kids hadn't been tested enough. She wanted to delay distribution." Maya's face twisted. "You didn't listen." Adrian shook his head. "I tried. I fought the board. But I didn't fight hard enough. I didn't make them stop. She left the company after that. She warned me I would regret it. She was right." Maya looked down at Ivy, then back at him. "So that's why you helped us. Because you owed her." At first, Adrian said, "Yes, but then I saw Ivy. I saw you, and it stopped being about a debt. It became something else. What she asked. Family," he whispered, "a chance to do something right." Maya did not respond. She sat back down and looked at her sister, whose eyes had closed again in exhausted sleep. Then she reached over and handed the note back to him. "She trusted you," Maya said. "I will too." The following week passed in quiet, cautious optimism. Ivy was improving. Her speech was limited, but present. Her muscles responded. Dr. Wu was cautiously hopeful. Maya visited every hour she could. Adrian split his time between the clinic and the legal office, where his team had begun to assemble adoption paperwork just in case. Maya had agreed to let him start the process. She had not promised anything yet, but the door was open. The journalist's story had faded, buried under a larger scandal involving a different pharmaceutical CEO. Adrian's reappearance had become yesterday's headline. But inside Mercy Clinic, the truth was still alive in every look Maya gave him, in every smile Ivy shared when she spotted him in the hallway. He had stopped hiding. For the first time in years, he felt known. Then on a Monday afternoon, Maya approached him outside the clinic entrance. "I need to show you something," she said. He followed her to the bench near the garden where spring tulips had started to bloom. She pulled a folded drawing from her backpack. It showed Ivy standing tall in a hospital hallway surrounded by children. Maya was beside her older, holding a clipboard and wearing a name tag that read Director. In the corner was Adrian holding the bear in one hand and the elephant in the other. Above them, in big colored letters, it said, "Welcome to Ivy House." "What is this?" he asked gently. "It's what I want to do," she said, "when Ivy's better. I want to open a home for kids like us, kids waiting for help, waiting for someone to stay." Adrian smiled softly. "That's beautiful. But I can't do it alone," she said. He looked at her, his heart full. "You won't have to." Inside, Ivy stirred from her nap and reached for the bear. Her voice was still soft, but it was no longer silent. Her body still trembled, but it no longer gave up. And in the hearts of three people who had found each other through a broken bear and a chance encounter, something new was beginning. Something permanent. Something called family. The first day Ivy returned home from the clinic was a mix of chaos, joy, and cautious celebration. Maya had spent the entire morning preparing their tiny apartment with streamers made from torn paper grocery bags and a single balloon she had bartered from a neighbor. Ivy walked slowly through the doorway, leaning slightly on Adrian's arm, her legs still adjusting to strength, her body still waking from weeks of quiet. But her eyes were alive, bright, watching everything like it was all brand new. The bear rode in her arms as if it had never left. Maya hugged her tightly and whispered, "Welcome back, little star," then kissed the top of her head. Adrian stayed the entire day. He cooked grilled cheese sandwiches and helped build a tiny tent made from bed sheets and broomsticks. Ivy laughed, a sound that still made Maya's throat tighten with disbelief, They played card games and watched a nature documentary until the screen went black from an overdue power bill. Nobody complained. That night, Maya let Ivy fall asleep curled between her and Adrian on the floor, wrapped in blankets, their hands tangled like roots. She stayed awake long after both had drifted off, staring at the ceiling, her heart bursting with a strange new feeling. It was not fear or panic or guilt. It was hope, and it terrified her more than anything. In the following weeks, they found a rhythm. Adrian began bringing over groceries every Friday evening. He taught Ivy how to fold paper birds, something he had once learned from his daughter. He never said her name aloud, but Maya saw the softness in his eyes when he talked about her drawings, or the way she used to line up her shoes in perfect rows. Ivy listened carefully, like she understood she was being handed a piece of someone who used to be here but was gone now. Maya started sketching again in the evenings after Ivy went to bed, her hands moving over scrap paper with a kind of hunger she had not felt in years. Adrian noticed and asked once what she was designing. She answered, "A place that doesn't turn kids away," and he did not ask anything more after that. One morning, as Ivy lay on a picnic blanket outside the community center drawing pictures of squirrels, Adrian pulled Maya aside. He was holding a folder. "I want you to read this," he said. She took it slowly, unsure. "It's everything you need to start the foundation. Permits, paperwork, grant applications. I've got contacts that can push it through faster." Maya blinked. "You already started this, I didn't want to assume. But if you want to build Ivy House, I want to help." She stared at him, then opened the folder. It was neat, labeled, legal, real. "I can't pay you back," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to," he said. "But I am asking if I can be a part of it. A real part. Not just the man who showed up when you needed a ride or surgery money. I want to be someone Ivy looks for when she's scared. Someone you trust when the lights go out. I don't want to disappear when things get easier." Maya's lips trembled. "I've never had someone offer to stay." "Then let me be the first." She said nothing, just nodded. And from that moment forward, the three of them were something more than patched together luck. They were forming something like a future. One afternoon, a week before Maya's birthday, Ivy spoke a sentence longer than 3 words. It happened on the sidewalk near the bus stop after a therapy session. A dog passed by and barked playfully. Ivy looked up at Adrian and said, "Can I have one too?" "A dog like that?" Adrian nearly dropped the grocery bag in his arms. Maya froze mid-step. Then Ivy laughed at their faces and skipped ahead. Maya and Adrian just looked at each other, unable to believe how far they had come from the little girl in the hospital bed who could not speak at all. But shadows are patient things, and they always wait just beyond the glow of new beginnings. Late one evening, after Maya had put Ivy to bed and Adrian had gone home, she sat down with her sketchbook and the folder of legal forms. She was filling out one of the grant applications when a knock came at the door. She opened it cautiously. A man in a blazer stood there with a notebook and a camera slung over his shoulder. "Maya Carter?" he asked. "Yes. My name is Douglas Kane. I'm with the Tribune. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about Adrian Rains." Maya's stomach tightened. "I'm sorry. It's late. I understand. But I think you should know that his return is raising some red flags in the business world. A man who vanished during a federal inquiry suddenly reappears and funds a children's clinic. People are curious." Maya stared at him. "He helped save my sister, and that's a beautiful headline. But the public deserves transparency." She stepped back. "My family is not a headline. Goodbye." She closed the door slowly, then locked it again. Her hands trembled as she sat down. That night, she did not sleep. The next morning, she showed Adrian the reporter's business card. He did not look surprised. "I thought he might circle back," he said. "What is he talking about?" "A federal inquiry." Adrian exhaled slowly. When Narvox hit the market, a lot of children got sick, not from the medication itself, but from counterfeit batches distributed overseas. Some of those suppliers were tied to my company. I tried to shut it down. But it was too late. I stepped down to keep the stock from crashing. Then I disappeared because I couldn't face what had happened. Maya sat beside him. "Why didn't you fight harder? I was broken," he said. I didn't think I deserved to be heard. Maya touched his hand. Then maybe now's your chance to make it right. Be heard. Tell the truth. He looked at her uncertain, but then he nodded. 2 days later, Adrian released a personal statement through his legal team. He admitted everything: the oversight, the guilt, the responsibility he failed to carry when it mattered. The news spread quickly. Some praised him for honesty, others called him opportunistic, but the noise did not matter much to the people who had already seen the real man. Ivy asked if the reporter was gone now. Maya smiled and said, "He is," and that was enough. By the end of spring, the clinic had offered Maya a part-time position as a program coordinator. Ivy was walking more confidently, speaking more clearly. Adrian moved into a small rental across the street from the apartment. He came over every morning for breakfast and stayed every evening to help with homework. They were a rhythm, a melody, a quiet life blooming under the soft hum of healing. One Sunday, Ivy pulled Maya into the living room. She was holding a card made from blue construction paper. On the front, in big messy letters, it said, "Happy Mother Day." Inside was a crayon drawing of the three of them, Maya in the middle, Ivy holding one hand, Adrian the other. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I love it," she said. "I made another one," Ivy said. "For Adrian." She handed it to him with both hands. His said, "Happy not Dad, but still family." He laughed and hugged her. That night, as Maya sat beside him on the couch while Ivy snored softly from the other room, Adrian turned to her. Would it be too soon to ask something? Maya looked at him. "Depends what it is." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was not a ring. It was a blueprint. "I found an old community center near the edge of town. It's for sale. It needs work. But it has 6 bedrooms and a garden. I think it could be Ivy House." Maya unfolded the blueprint and looked at it for a long time. Then she said, "Let's build it." He smiled. They sat together like that, plans spread across their laps, the future blooming quietly at their feet. And somewhere in the bedroom, Ivy clutched her bear tighter in her sleep. The note her mother had hidden had done its job. It had led them home. The old community center stood at the edge of the city like a forgotten relic from another era. Its paint was peeling in long strips, and the windows bore the cloudy film of years gone by, but the bones were good. Solid, the kind of structure built with intention back when buildings were meant to last. Ivy stood on the sidewalk, holding Adrian's hand, her bear, under one arm, as Maya unlocked the front door for the first time. The key stuck, but when it finally turned and the door swung open, a rush of cool, dust-scented air met them like the exhale of something waiting too long to be seen. Ivy stepped in first. She looked around the dim lobby, then pointed to a chipped mural on the far wall that depicted smiling children playing under trees. "It already feels like a home," she whispered. Maya turned to Adrian, eyes wide. "We can do this," she said. "I really believe we can." "We already are," he replied. The weeks that followed were a blur of sweat and color. Volunteers from the clinic came on weekends. Local businesses donated paint tools, even flooring. Adrian dipped into his savings without hesitation. Maya sketched late into the night, reimagining classrooms into art therapy spaces, empty offices into reading nooks, the main hall into a common room filled with soft light and warmer walls. Ivy spent her afternoons exploring every creaking hallway, naming the rooms herself: Hope Room, Courage Room, Secret Garden for the overgrown courtyard where wild mint grew between the bricks. One day she handed Maya a drawing labeled Dream Room and said, "This is where the big kids go when they don't think anyone cares about them. But here they'll remember someone does." Maya cried that night without hiding it, because it was true. Ivy House was not just a place. It was a promise, and it was finally happening. On the day of the soft opening, the building was still unfinished. In places, one hallway still smelled of varnish, and the upstairs windows needed replacing. But none of that mattered. A small group gathered in the courtyard as the afternoon sun filtered through the trees. Ivy wore a pale yellow dress with flowers at the hem, the same one she had worn when she came home from the hospital. Adrian stood beside Maya in a simple navy jacket. He had not worn a suit in over a year. Maya did not prepare a speech, but when someone handed her the microphone, she looked at Ivy, then out at the chairs filled with nurses, caseworkers, neighbors, and people who had once been strangers and now felt like roots. She took a breath and said, "This house is named after a little girl who once offered everything she had to save someone else. She thought all she had to give was a teddy bear, but what she gave was belief. Belief that the world could be better, that people would show up if you asked them with your whole heart, that love could grow in even the coldest places if someone was brave enough to plant it. So this is for her, and for every other child who thinks they are alone. You're not." The courtyard erupted in quiet applause, the kind that did not break the moment, but deepened it. Ivy smiled without speaking and pulled Maya's hand into hers. The ribbon was cut. The door swung open, and Ivy House took its first breath. Over the following months, the house filled with life. Children arrived quietly, sometimes with a caseworker, sometimes without one. Each came with their own silence, their own reasons for not meeting your eyes, for clutching small backpacks or nothing at all. Maya welcomed them all with the same sentence. "You are not in trouble. You are not a problem to fix. You are home now." It worked. Slowly, sometimes painfully, they opened up. One girl who had not spoken in 4 weeks started humming after Ivy shared her paper bird collection. A boy who had been caught stealing from the grocery store wrote Maya a letter thanking her for not asking why. Adrian built raised garden beds in the back and taught the kids how to plant spinach and tomatoes. He called it food therapy. They called it dirt fun. One evening, as Maya finished sorting through donation forms in the front office, Ivy came running in with her bear swinging from her arm. "Come quick," she said. Maya stood up, heart racing. "What is it?" "Come see." She followed her through the hallway to the front porch, where a small group of children stood clustered around a bench. Adrian sat on the edge of it, his arm around a new arrival. The boy could not have been older than 10. He held a paper note in one hand and Ivy's bear in the other. He found the message Ivy whispered. Maya stepped closer. The boy looked up, eyes red from crying. He held out the bear. "This was yours." Ivy nodded. "It says to believe in kindness, and that you are not broken." Maya froze. She had forgotten about the note, the one their mother had sewn into the bear's chest years ago, back when Ivy had been so sick. It had not been meant for anyone else. But somehow it was exactly what he needed. "It's yours now," Ivy said. "It helped me. Maybe it can help you." Adrian looked up at Maya, and in his eyes she saw the miracle of it all. The way love, when passed on, did not shrink, but multiplied. The boy nodded and clutched the bear close. Maya reached out and touched his shoulder. "You're safe here," she said. The next morning, Maya found Adrian sitting on the back steps of the garden. He held a photo in his hand. It was old, faded, a picture of his daughter taken on the last vacation they had before the world changed. Maya sat beside him. "I think she would have loved this place," he said. "She's part of it," Maya replied. "In every room." He nodded. "I still have days when the guilt crushes my lungs." "So do I," she said. But then I remember Ivy's first word after the surgery was, "Again." And I think maybe we're all getting another chance. Not to forget, but to try again. Adrian looked at her. "Do you ever wonder what's next?" "I used to," she said. "But now I think what's next is right here." He took her hand, held it without rushing anything. "I want to build more," he said softly. "Not just centers, but a life. With you." She looked at him. "Then let's build slowly, together." By winter, Ivy House had become more than a safe haven. It was a beginning for everyone who walked through its doors. Children came and went, but they left notes pinned to the message board in the hallway. "Thank you. I found a new family. I remember how to dream." Adrian installed a tiny mailbox out front for anonymous letters. Maya taught design classes on Saturdays. Ivy, now speaking clearly and with confidence, became something of a mascot, telling new arrivals, This house used to be sad. Now it's not. And you won't be either. One morning, as snow fell lightly outside and the kitchen filled with the smell of pancakes, Maya sat at the table reviewing blueprints for a second Ivy house location on the other side of the city. Adrian poured coffee. Ivy brought over her newest drawing, a picture of a giant heart with dozens of stick figures inside it. "It's called All of Us," she said. Maya smiled. Perfect name. As the morning light warmed the windows and laughter rang down the hallway, Adrian looked around the kitchen at the worn table, the chipped mugs, the little girl humming to herself as she colored. "This is it," he said. "This is the miracle I never believed I deserved." Maya looked at him, tears in her eyes. It was never about deserving. It was about choosing, and we all chose to stay. And just like that, Ivy House wasn't just a building anymore. It was a heartbeat, a story still being written. And at the center of it all, a girl who once offered a teddy bear for her sister's life, and a man who once disappeared because he thought he could never heal, sat in a kitchen filled with light love. And the simple truth that sometimes family is not who you start with. It is who stays when the world goes quiet. And that is where they stayed. Together. Home. If this story touched your heart like it touched ours, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And remember, sometimes a single act of kindness, a teddy bear, a whispered word, a second chance can rewrite someone's whole life. If you believe in the power of chosen family love that heals and the kind of hope that grows even in broken places, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Your next journey might be just one click away.